What could possibly justify the escalating violence in Gaza? This question resonates around the world as we witness the harrowing situation unfolding in the region. The Israel-Hamas war rages on, with the southern Gazan city of Khan Yunis being a major hotspot of intense fighting. The impact has been devastating, with recent airstrikes in central Gaza claiming dozens of lives and leaving a trail of destruction. The war has not only resulted in physical damage, but it has also taken a massive toll on human life. The Gazan Health Ministry reports a death toll that has sadly risen to over 20,000. More than 2 million people have been displaced, left cold, hungry, and desperate for aid that seems to be constantly out of reach. But the casualties are not only civilian, the fighting has also claimed the lives of 15 Israeli soldiers since Friday. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in response to the crisis, has vowed to intensify the war until Hamas is eliminated. Meanwhile, the Israeli government is planning for a new phase of the fighting, though specifics remain shrouded in mystery. Hundreds of targets in Gaza are being bombed daily, and more soldiers are being sent to the region, escalating the situation further. While the bombs drop, a different kind of explosion is happening within the confines of Gaza: mass detentions. Humanitarian groups are calling for an immediate ceasefire and investigation into these detentions, while the international community watches in growing alarm and concern. The situation in Gaza is not just a war zone but a humanitarian crisis. The Gazan health system is on the brink of collapse, with Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital reporting a critical lack of supplies. Rescue efforts are hindered by constant bombings, particularly in densely populated neighborhoods like Al-Maghazi, which have been heavily targeted. The world watches and waits for a resolution, but for now, the situation remains dire. As the death toll rises, the international community watches in horror and concern. But what of the human cost in this prolonged conflict? In the midst of this ongoing war, a humanitarian crisis of staggering proportions is unfolding in Gaza. As the conflict rages on, the region is being stripped of its critical supplies. Food, water, medicine, basic necessities are in short supply, and the situation is growing more dire with each passing day. The health system, once the lifeline of the Gazan people, is now on the brink of collapse. Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital, one of the few medical facilities left standing, is struggling to function amidst the chaos. It's a desperate scene, with doctors and nurses working around the clock, often without the necessary resources to save lives. But the crisis extends beyond the hospital walls. Across Gaza, more than 2 million people have been displaced by the conflict. These are individuals, families, children forced to leave their homes with nothing more than the clothes on their backs. They're cold, they're hungry, and they're scared. In Al-Maghazi, a densely populated neighborhood now heavily targeted by airstrikes, the situation is particularly dire. With the constant bombings hindering rescue efforts, help is slow to arrive for those who need it most. Internationally, the alarm bells are ringing. Humanitarian groups are calling for a ceasefire, pleading for an investigation into Israel's mass detentions in Gaza. They're urging the global community to step up, to provide much-needed aid and support. Yet, amidst the political posturing and strategic maneuvering, these calls for help are struggling to be heard. The death toll in Gaza rises daily, now surpassing 20,000. Each number is a life, a story, a human being caught in the crossfire of a conflict they didn't choose. Each one is a stark reminder of the immense human cost of this war. As the Israeli government plans for a new phase of the fighting, the people of Gaza brace for what's to come. Without specifics, without a clear end in sight, the uncertainty only compounds their fear. With the health system on the brink of collapse and millions displaced, the human cost of this conflict is immeasurable. What role does the international community play amidst this chaos? A question that invites us to explore the actions and decisions of two significant players on the global stage: the United States and the United Nations. In the midst of the escalating violence in Gaza, the United Nations Security Council took a vote on a ceasefire resolution, a crucial step towards potentially halting the conflict. However, a notable abstention came from the United States. This decision has raised eyebrows and concerns about the distribution of aid in the region. The abstention essentially means the United States did not express a formal opinion on the resolution, a move that can affect the balance of power and influence the course of the conflict. The United States, a key ally of Israel, has often used its veto power in the past to support the nation's interests. But this act of abstention, neither supporting nor opposing, sends a mixed message that reverberates through the international community. It raises questions about the United States' stance and its commitment to resolving the crisis. Meanwhile, the United Nations, a beacon of hope for conflict resolution and humanitarian aid, has found itself in a challenging situation. The lack of unanimous support for the ceasefire resolution reflects the complexities of international politics and the divergent interests of member nations. The international alarm over the situation in Gaza continues to grow. Calls for a ceasefire and increased humanitarian aid are becoming louder, echoing in the halls of the United Nations and reverberating across nations. The world watches, waits, and questions the role of these powerful entities in the unfolding crisis. The role of the United States and the United Nations in this conflict is significant. Their decisions, or lack thereof, can tip the scale towards peace or further violence. As we delve deeper into this crisis, it's important to remember that the actions, or inactions, of the international community have significant implications for the people of Gaza. Opening. How is this conflict affecting the wider region? The Gaza conflict is not merely a localized incident. Its impacts reverberate across the region, creating a ripple effect of instability and tension. One of the most alarming developments of this conflict has been the clashes along Israel's northern border with Lebanon, which have resulted in additional casualties. This not only escalates the situation but also draws in new participants, adding another layer to an already complex conflict. Meanwhile, Israel's government is reportedly planning a new phase of fighting. While specifics remain under wraps, this announcement signals a potential shift in the conflict, possibly affecting other regional dynamics. It's a stark reminder that the consequences of this conflict aren't confined to Gaza or Israel alone. The continued war in Gaza serves as a catalyst for further regional unrest, exacerbating existing tensions and potentially sparking new conflicts. As the situation evolves, the wider implications of this conflict become more visible, and the need for a comprehensive and lasting solution becomes increasingly urgent. Closing, the ripple effects of this conflict extend far beyond the borders of Gaza. Where do we go from here? As we draw to a close, it's important to revisit the key points discussed. The ongoing war in Gaza, marked by intense fighting, airstrikes, and a mounting death toll, has led to a severe humanitarian crisis. Over 20,000 lives lost, more than 2 million displaced, cold, and hungry. The health system in Gaza is on the brink of collapse with a dire shortage of critical supplies. The international community, including the United States and the United Nations, play a crucial role in this conflict. But their actions, or lack thereof, raise concerns about aid distribution and broader geopolitical consequences. The war has also sparked clashes along Israel's northern border with Lebanon, adding another layer of complexity. Looking ahead, the future remains uncertain. The Israeli government plans for a new phase of fighting but hasn't provided specifics. As the international alarm grows, calls for a ceasefire and increased humanitarian aid intensify. Yet amid the turmoil and uncertainty, the hope for peace persists. As the situation in Gaza continues to unfold, one can only hope for an end to the violence and a path towards peace and recovery.